If you think losing the love of your life is the worst pain you could ever feel, imagine finding out your best friend was driving the knife. My name is John, and I'm about to tell you the darkest, most gut-wrenching tale of betrayal, grief, and cold, calculated revenge. So buckle up. Pour yourself a drink, because this story is long, messy, and unlike anything you've heard before. Stay with me to the end, trust me, you won't see the final twist coming. I grew up in a quiet town of about 30,000 people. Emily and I met in kindergarten. I still remember that first day of school. She was the little red-headed girl with freckles, reading Charlotte's Web under the oak tree. And I was the scrawny kid clutching my mom's hand so tightly I nearly choked myself. But the moment our eyes met, it was like something ignited. We spent every recess together, built forts behind the school, and by middle school, everyone called us E and J. From band concerts to football games, we were inseparable. When we turned 18, we both got jobs in the city, she in an advertising agency, me at a small tech startup. And after 3 years of dating, I asked her to marry me one rainy afternoon in a little park pavilion. She said yes, of course. By the time I was 22, we bought a modest 2-bedroom house on Elm Street. We were planning for kids. In fact, our first baby was due that very spring. But fate has a wicked sense of humor. One day, a warehouse I'd agreed to help remodel collapsed. An old shelving unit gave way, and Emily was crushed beneath the debris. In the span of a heartbeat, I lost my pregnant wife and our unborn son. 1 second, she was laughing at something I whispered under her breath. The next, all I saw was a wall of metal and wood toppling over. Paramedics tried to save her. I held her hand until her last breath. The doctors said there was nothing they could do. Then they took my lifeless fiancé away on a stiff board. And just like that, half of me died too. The rest of that year is a blur of funeral arrangements, lawyers, and grief so deep I thought I might drown. The company that owned that warehouse paid hush money, far more than I ever wanted or needed. I spent a month living off alcohol, refusing to wake up some mornings. Emily's parents pleaded with me not to kill myself. They moved in with me for 6 months, forced me back to work. I went back to my job as a regional sales rep. I drove 1,000 miles a month, staying in chain hotel rooms, trying to avoid looking at her side of the bed. Some nights I'd wake up gasping, convinced she was at the door, but she was gone. I was alone. By the time 3 years passed, everyone said I'd moved on. But you don't move on from that. You just learn to breathe again. 4 years after the accident, I was living in my hometown again, working the same sales territory. My old high school buddy, Daniel, had just been promoted to branch director at the same company. He called me one Friday afternoon. "John, bro, we're having a barbecue at my place. You've got to come. It's been ages." I reluctantly agreed. I'd grown tired of my own pity party. Maybe seeing familiar faces would do me some good. At Daniel's backyard gathering, I met Sophie, a new hire in my sales region. She had long dark hair, a quick smile, and a laugh that felt like sunshine after a storm. When she shook my hand, something inside me, a muscle in my chest, felt like it remembered how to beat right. We talked politics, movies, her writing aspirations. By the end of the night, we were swapping numbers. She lived a few towns over, but soon she was tagging along on my business trips. 6 months later, she moved into my house on Elm Street, into the very home where Emily and I had planned our lives together. Emily's parents claimed they saw a spark in me they hadn't witnessed in years. Even my own mother told me, "John, sweetheart, it's okay to love someone else again." And for a little while, I allowed myself to believe it. But things weren't as golden as they seemed. There were déjà vu moments I wish I'd never ignored. First, Sophie started taking phone calls in the bathroom, closing the door, voice lowering to a whisper whenever I approached. She'd laugh, then hang up. I chalked it up to work calls. Second, neighbors began asking if they could borrow sugar, just as they were watching a silver sedan parked in my driveway at odd hours. I recognized that car, Daniel's old model. Third, one night I found a button in my coat pocket that wasn't mine, small. Black, pearl snap, like the ones Daniel always wore on his shirts. I confronted Sophie. She snapped, "You're paranoid. You haven't let me live since I moved in." I backed off, thinking maybe I was just still shell-shocked from losing Emily. Maybe I was blaming everything on her because I couldn't stand the idea of loving again only to lose again. But the suspicion gnawed at me. Daniel insisted he and Sophie were just friends, that I was hearing rumors, that maybe I should see a therapist again. I almost went along with that lie. But something about Sophie's eyes, she wouldn't meet mine when I asked if there was another man. Her lips twisted. She said, "You don't trust me. That's not love, John." And she stormed out of the room. 2 nights later, I had an unexpected business trip canceled. It left me with a free weekend at home. I should have called Sophie to say I'd be back late. But something in me said, "Go home now, check on that car." Check on her. I drove down the winding country road toward Elm Street. On the last curve, I saw it. Daniel's silver sedan, headlights off, parked behind a hedge that blocked my driveway. My stomach twisted. I climbed through my back gate, heart thudding. I peered through the window, through the curtains slit, and froze. There on the kitchen counter were 2 bowls of ramen noodles they'd been cooking recently, steam still rising. On the countertop, an open beer can. Daniel was perched on that counter, grinning. Sophie had her arms wrapped around him, laughing at something he whispered. Her eyes were closed, head tilted back, the exact same way Emily used to laugh. But this time, it was at Daniel. With Daniel. My brain went numb. Then everything went black. I fell against the doorframe, breathing so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Blood pounded in my ears. I should have run, screamed, called the cops, but I just stood there. Daniel looked up. His smile faltered as he saw me at the window. Sophie's smile straightened, confusion dawning in her eyes. I won't lie, my first thought was violence. My fist clenched so tight I felt my knuckles pop. But instead, I stopped, backed away, and walked to my car. I didn't hit him. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just turned my back on 2 people I once trusted more than anything and went home. A normal person would call the police. A normal person would break up, change locks, maybe move away. But I'm not normal. What Sophie and Daniel did tore something out of me. The part of me that believed in love, the part of me that cared about justice. I realized if I simply called the cops on Daniel for trespassing and adultery, Sophie would disappear and I'd go back to a hollow life. It wasn't enough. I needed her to pay and Daniel to pay, so I made a plan. A plan so precise that not even Sherlock Holmes could have found a flaw. Daniel had a history with drugs, cocaine, and weed in small amounts, enough to get him buzzed. I had sources. An acquaintance from college who ran a delivery for friends. A bartender who owed me a favor. Within 2 weeks, I had a small stash of coke, a bag of pot, and a handful of pills, more than enough to plant evidence. I also borrowed some of my own valuables. The watch Emily gave me on our 2nd anniversary. A pair of cufflinks I'd never worn, and a designer pen my dad gave me as a graduation present. I hid them in my sock drawer. I then took my walk-in safe. Yes, I had a walk-in safe under the basement stairs, a leftover from when I did handyman work for a security firm, and stashed Daniel's tiny bag of pills inside one of the drawers, along with a few followers, novelty items, charging cables, things that looked like they belonged to him. The following weekend, Daniel hosted a barbecue at his place. He invited his entire sales team. Sophie stayed home, out of the picture that night. He made sure to pour Daniel 3 stiff whiskeys over the course of 2 hours. By the end, Daniel was slurring, leaning on the fence for support. After everyone else left, I told Daniel I was sorry he was hammered and needed a place to crash. He mumbled, "Yeah man, I'll crash on your couch." I guided him to my living room, propped him face down on the cushions, and left him snoring. Then I walked upstairs, grabbed that locked box under my bed, and slipped the cocaine bag into his coat pocket. I scattered the pills among the cushions. I also took one of the cufflinks from my sock drawer and dropped it under his body, making sure it clinked against the hardwood floor. I picked a few strands of his hair from his jacket sleeve and tucked them inside one of the sleeves. When I was done, I wiped my fingerprints off the coat, left the house sealed up that storm door key in a Ziploc, and went to bed. 2 days later, early Saturday morning, I smashed the glass on my own back door with a hammer I found under my toolbox. I then called 911, reporting a break-in. When the officers arrived, I acted stunned. I came home, the door was shattered, I said, voice trembling. They dusted for prints, found none, because I'd worn gloves. The detective looked at Daniel's winter coat lying in a heap by the entryway. I feigned confusion. I don't know how that got there. I also had an electrician friend install security cameras inside my house kitchen, living room, hallway. They showed me how you could pause recordings for privacy if I ever needed to film something without catching my kids. I pretended to thank him. Meanwhile, I set each camera to send me an email whenever it was turned off or paused. That way, if Daniel ever tried to cover his tracks, I'd know. The chief detective suggested I stay with family until the break-in was sorted, which I did, sneaking glances at my phone whenever the cameras sent me a notification. Meanwhile, I met with a lawyer friend and asked him to draw up papers proving that Sophie had zero claim on Emily's estate. They wrote a simple affidavit, because I'd been married to Emily when she died, and Sophie was not legally married to me yet. She had no rights. I signed the documents, got them notarized, and left a sealed copy in my safe deposit box. If Sophie tried to claim half the house or any of Emily's savings, she'd be in for a rude surprise. And that gave me a sense of invincibility. 2 weeks later, I pulled it off. I booked Sophie and 2 of her girlfriends a week-long surprise luxury spa getaway in Palm Springs. I told her it was to celebrate our 4-year anniversary, just to let her think I still loved her. She gleamed with delight. Meanwhile, I booked 2 weeks of vacation miles away, at a friend's beach house in Miami. I pretended I needed space to recharge from work stress. But really, I just wanted to watch everything unfold from a distance. I paid in cash for the spa, used burner phones to confirm flights, made sure there was no paper trail. Sophie was excited. She posted selfies in cucumber masks on her private Instagram, tagged me in stories, gushing, "My love is spoiling me rotten." 2 days before the trip, I also sent Daniel a random text. "Hey, I was in your neighborhood. Wanted to bring you those TPS reports you asked for. Are you home tonight?" He texted back, "Sure, come on by," I replied, heading over at 9 p.m. Little did he know he was walking into my next stage of the plan. The night Sophie was set to fly out, I drove to Daniel's house at exactly 9 p.m. on the dot. I parked across the street in my silver sedan, the same model he drove. He opened the door, surprised to see me with nothing but a stack of manila folders. "Hey bro," he said with a grin, "come on in." We sat at his kitchen table. I slid the folders toward him, fake memos for a project that didn't exist. Daniel flipped through them, nodding, not guarding his drink. He pulled out a 5th of bourbon from his refrigerator. "Shot?" he offered. I pretended to agree, took the shot. "Oof, that's nasty." He laughed, poured me another. Meanwhile, I waited until he set his whiskey glass on the counter. I knew right where he'd stash his keys, on that little hook by the door. As soon as he got up to refill our glasses, I slipped his keys into my pocket. Then I excused myself. "Hey man, I gotta run, forgot my phone in the car." I left the kitchen at 9:20 p.m., waved goodbye to him in one motion. Once I was in my own car, I dialed the local police dispatch anonymously. "There's a silver sedan in a residential alley. I just saw a guy inside there handing over a small baggie, could be cocaine. License plate is blurred out, might want to check." I hung up and drove back to my house in Miami. By midnight, I was streaming Netflix on a friend's couch. My phone sat charging on the nightstand. Whenever a camera was disabled, I got an email. By 9:45 p.m., I saw one, camera 2 paused. I didn't check again until the next morning. Meanwhile, Daniel's house was crawling with detectives. The neighbor on the left reported seeing a tailpipe smoking weird. At 10:15 p.m., an undercover cop rammed Daniel's silver sedan with a K9 unit. Next day's headline: local sales director arrested for possession of cocaine and stolen property. They found that little black bag stuffed in his coat. They found the pills under his couch cushion. They even dusted his fingerprints off the designer pen, only my DNA was on it. He was cuffed, booked, and taken away by 11 p.m., all because of 2 calls from 2 different neighbors. One of them was me, plus a tip the dispatch traced back to a burner phone. They never suspected John, the grieving widower in Miami, and Sophie? She never saw it coming. While Daniel was rotting in a holding cell, I sprang into action. I called movers to clear out Sophie's entire life from my house. First light Monday, I met them at 7. We packed her clothes, jewelry, pictures, everything. I paid in cash, told them to leave the boxes at Unit 1B of Crossroads Storage. By Tuesday afternoon, the for rent sign was on my lawn. I posted the listing under a fake name, no address, just a PO box. I wanted to vanish the last trace of Sophie from my life. Meanwhile, Sophie returned from the spa, exhausted and sunburned. She pulled into my driveway at 4:30 p.m. hauling her luggage. She yanked open the front door and found it empty. No furniture, no photos, no clothes. She pounded on my parents' front door, screaming that someone had to tell her what happened to John. They simply shook their heads, shut the door. Desperate, she called our mutual friends. No one answered. She texted me, "John? Babe? Where are you?" No reply. She called his cell straight to voicemail. It wasn't until she broke down and texted Maya, my only confidant in town, that she got a reply. Maya said, "Meet me at Hoboken Diner, 8 p.m. At 8 p.m., Sophie staggered into that diner, face swollen from crying. Maya slid a sealed envelope across the tabletop. Sophie opened it. Inside: 1. A stack of photos, Daniel and Sophie, in my kitchen, caught on my own backup camera. In one shot, Sophie's head flung back in laughter as Daniel adjusted her bra strap. In another, Daniel's hand is flat on her lower back, pulling her close. 2. A printed PDF of the arrest report, Daniel's mugshot included. Date and time stamped at 10:05 p.m. the night before. 3. A single sheet of paper, typed, "Sophie, I gave you everything. You chose him over me." Now Daniel has a new problem, trying to explain how my stuff ended up missing from your home. Actions have consequences. Do not try to find me, John, Sophie screamed. Coffee cups rattled. People stared. She dropped the envelope, ran for the door. That was the last time I ever saw her. I changed my number. I deleted all social media. I moved interstate, new job, new apartment, new life. No one in that old town knows I'm the same John who once begged the police to let Daniel go. Because now, Daniel is serving a 2-year sentence for possession of cocaine with intent to distribute, plus charges for stolen property. Sophie lost her job for poor performance. Everyone said she couldn't handle grief. No one suspected she was a cheater. No one ever imagined I'd be smart enough to pull this off. I live in a new city, now skyscraper views, a small apartment with a view of the harbor. I still miss Emily. I still miss the life we planned. Some nights I dream of her, but I sleep easy knowing that betrayal has a price. And I collected mine with interest. I thought justice would be loud handcuffs, headlines, fireworks. Instead, it was quiet. It was a house emptied of laughter. It was a driveway free of Daniel's silver sedan. It was 2 people left alone with the truth, Sophie sobbing in a diner booth, Daniel behind bars. And me? I'm just living. Selling software to small businesses, going to yoga class on Wednesdays, writing a memoir that no one will ever read because I don't trust anyone with my story. But when I look in the mirror at night, I don't see a victim. I see a man who refused to be broken. A man who refused to let betrayal define him. So if you've ever been stabbed in the back, take heart. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't a scream. It's a whisper, justice served. If you've ever experienced betrayal, or if you know someone who has, share this video. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so no one else misses a story of triumph over heartbreak. Stay strong, stay true. And remember, true justice never sleeps.